Hey guys, so today we are going to be talking about underpinning. Now, underpinning is typically something that a lot of investors, I feel, get really nervous about, and it's intimidating. I mean, it's a huge job typically. You don't get to see a lot of anything happen, obviously just the floor lowering, but it's a big financial commitment for not a lot of guts and glory when you talk about the house as a whole and its beauty once you've finished renovating it. So what I'd like to do is just talk about our strategy, what we decided to do. This is our first time doing an underpinning project ourselves. So a lot of people might have been through it already and they paid contractors to do it, but we decided to hire within, figure out the best ways to do it. So if you guys have some better strategies or some better suggestions, please comment below. Would love to hear some feedback on maybe some better ways to do it, because of course we are always looking to improve as well. But I think that there's going to be a ton of opportunity coming down the pipe with regards to underpinning projects and utilizing basement suites, especially here in Hamilton. Now that property values have gone up enough that we can justify the cost per square foot, I think that it's going to open up a lot of doors. So let's go check out the drawings. I'm going to show you kind of our strategy on what we're planning to do here. Okay, so here is the floor plan of what our basement looks like. And in this particular basement, we actually have a rubble foundation, which makes underpinning that much more challenging. But the first thing you'll probably notice is how they've sectioned off each into these little blocks. Now, in a rubble foundation, it's a little bit more challenging because the space between these sections has to be limited to 2.5 feet maximum. So what effectively these blocks mean that you can see here is that we have to break up the pour into a couple of different phases. So what will happen is we're going to have to dig out this section here, which is 1. We'll have to leave 2 and 3 still filled in, so we're not going to touch those. And then we're going to dig this out 1. 2, 3 is left blank. 1's going to be dug out. 2, 3 is blank. And so once all the ones have been dug out, you'll see a little hole here, a little hole here, a little hole here. And what's required is we're going to have to put the rebar in here. We're then going to have to pour the concrete in. We'll form it, pour the concrete in. Once the concrete is set, we take the forms off of each section number 1. And we're going to move on to subsection number 2. And then we're going to repeat the same process until everything has all been done. So as we flip the project here, and we've done a few markups here, at the same time as doing all of this, we're going to also include some interior waterproofing. Since we're doing all this digging and all this concrete work anyway, it seems very fitting that we might as well just get it all done from the get-go. But this is kind of what I want to show you guys here, okay? So these are the different sections, and obviously maximum is 2.5 feet that we can do. Now in each section we also have to put this rebar kind of cross section here, and that's going to give us the appropriate force that or strength that we need in the concrete, as to not create any sort of issues on the back end. Alright, so now that you guys kind of have a rough idea of what we're going to do, a couple of key points. The people that you want to do this kind of work should be people that are familiar with concrete. They're familiar with how to form concrete. They're familiar with how to work in these kind of spaces. So, of course, the easiest way to go about doing it is hiring a subcontractor who specializes in these kind of basement things. That's fine. However, you're also paying for a very specialized service, which can often mean pretty hefty bill at the end of the day. So what I would suggest is that there are people and laborers out there who understand concrete, who know what's going on. They might be able to help you, and they might even have done this already. So just something to note. A couple other things. Insurance. If you're doing an underpinning job, make sure you have it covered under your insurance, just in case anything happens. Underpinning typically doesn't fall under the same home renovation insurance. You have to add it in there, and it's expensive because of course it could result in liability. So that's one thing. You want to make sure that you cover insurance. Second thing, and probably the one thing that's going to ease up on the fact that you might not need insurance after all, is get an engineer to stamp the drawing. Make sure that you have somebody who has done engineering designs before for underpinning projects, is a structural engineer and knows what they're doing, approves the drawing, make sure that it works, and has a plan in place. So for a typical foundation underpinning job, If it was a poured foundation, for example, we might get away with doing like a 6-foot stretch. So that's going to cut down on a lot of time. It's going to make things a lot simpler. But of course, in our situation where there's a rubble foundation, it's a lot more work. We have to do smaller segments. It's a little bit more laborious. However, we got a plan and we're going to work with it. So let's go check out site.
How's it going there, young man?
All right, so I'm here on site, and we're just finished the last phase pour. So there's still going to be some concrete work that needs to be done, but I want to showcase just how much ceiling height that we've got because it's absolutely awesome. Okay, so I'll take you on a bit of a tour and just once again go through the steps, what we did, and what we're still planning to do. So we haven't done the interior waterproofing yet. That's obviously going to be coming. We still have to dig the trenches for that section now, but you'll see just from an underpinning standpoint how this really looks. Okay, so you can see even from the last stair, there used to be one step coming off that, and that would have been right onto the grade. But you can start to see too where we've started to form things up. So this one was just recently poured, so was this one. So you can see it's phase 1, then phase 2, phase 3, phase 1, 2, 3. So it looks really neat how they've managed to put it all together here. And if I can pan to the entire room here, it's hard to really show how high the ceiling height is. But right now, from the ground, so right from here to the top of the ceiling is 93 inches. So it gives this space an enormous feel. It's always hard to showcase that on camera, but it's really, really neat to see how much space we've got in here and compare it to what it was. So it's hard to tell in this little area here. This is eventually going to be the future bathroom. So that's happening here. And you will notice that, like, one thing that we did learn throughout, you'll notice in some areas we kind of, for example here, we got a little excited on the first pour and poured it much higher than we had to. And of course, you kind of learn from these situations, like what to do. So we actually drew a level line across it to even it out a little bit. And now we have a uniform step. So one thing to note too is that when you're underpinning, you can't really avoid coming out. So you do lose some square footage. So this thing comes out, I want to say maybe 3.5 inches. Maybe just slightly less, and the wall is not necessarily straight. So when we go to frame this property up, there's going to be dimple board on the wall anyway, coming all the way down. It's going to be curving around. But when we frame it, we're actually going to try and salvage as much square footage as we can and fur out the bottom portion of the wall, so it's not this whole width of a 2x4, but can still incorporate like an electrical receptacle or something like that. So two areas that we still have to deal with are, of course, are these structural posts. So you see that we do have some shoring in place. Prior to this, obviously the shoring was much more as well while we were disturbing the soil, but right now we're very confident nothing is going anywhere. But the place is just off the charts. Looks really, really cool. So one section still that we had to form up and do is a little bit overkill here with the supports, but they actually they took out some of the loose rubble that was in this wall here, and I guess they pushed a piece of plywood and poured the concrete in behind it to hold it in. So just making sure that everything's secure. But you can tell, like, even the place feels rock solid. So I don't think that there's anything that we have to worry about. Now within each section here, of course, there is that rebar that we put in as well, that cross section of rebar. And so everything has the proper structural capacity to hold everything up. And you can tell too that none of the foundation has been disturbed. There's no cracks, nothing's budged. In one respect, you know, the rubble foundations are vulnerable because, of course, if you create a void underneath it, the rubble can fall out from from where you've created that void. But these foundations are like take a look. It's like over 18 inches thick. And you know, there's a lot of truth when people say, you know, they don't make them like they used to. This property is absolutely rock solid. So now we're zoned in this area where we're zoned for legal triplex. And now we're going to get approved for a beautiful basement unit here. It's going to be a 1-bedroom, and we've just increased or added another revenue source into this incredible property here.